In this video, we are going to talk about the 7 stages of marketing and brand building. This walks through everything from what to focus on when you're at a new brand or just starting, all the way to when you're a big brand and trying to maintain relevance. What are all these stages? It's really useful to understand as a creative or as a marketer to know where your toolkit best applies, and also to think about as a brand owner if you're stuck or you feel like you're concentrating on the wrong things. So no matter where you're at in your journey, I think there's a lot you can learn from this video, and I'm excited to get into it. Let's lock in. But first, let's talk about stage 1. What do you do at the very beginning of your journey? What do you focus on? We're inundated with all these recommendations and all these different strategies. And people often feel like they're being pulled in so many different directions, or they need to do something because someone says they should do it. That's what everyone else is doing. But here's what really is the difference at stage 1 of your marketing. Level 1 is one organic or paid strategy. You need to find one thing that works. And you may test a few to get there, but you need to be laser focused on getting one thing that makes money. This is the foundation from which all the rest of your brand is made. And honestly, nothing else matters. Not an amazing brand kit, not awesome art direction. It may be something different than what you expect, and it also may not be the most glamorous thing. But one organic or paid strategy that makes you money. And this is important because you need this to actually fund the next stage of your growth. You need to validate where your product is at, and you need to be able to say, hey, I'm making some money off this thing that allows me to invest it further in the business. And what you'll see happen is a lot of businesses will start expanding into other stuff without having a profitable channel, and they'll just get further and further underwater. And if you're in that scenario, which happens to a lot of people, I just recommend cutting back and going and focusing on finding that one thing. And a few examples, kind of both small and large. What I like to look at for a big brand that I think is kind of underestimated inside this was when David launched their protein bars. They actually found their channel inside TikTok Shop, which I don't even know if they expected. But they had a product with a strong set of USPs, unique selling points. Basically, they offer the most protein to the least amount of calories and the least amount of sugar of any protein bar on the market, which gives them a real leg up to market on a network like TikTok Shop. And they sold a lot of bars on commission with creators doing that had far more efficacy than what they did on social media, and also helped them get lift and awareness as they went into retail. Over in the organic world, an example I absolutely love is Bad Hombres. They are a frozen bean and cheese burrito company that services only Arizona, and they have thrived on organic Instagram, where they continually told the story of how this couple was starting a frozen bean and cheese burrito company and all the trials and tribulations that came from that. But by focusing on carousels, on videos, and on stories purely organically, they've sold out every drop again and again, knowing that that's the key channel that helps drive their story. But before anything else, before you move on, before you think about optimization or spending more money, get to this one thing. And it may differ by your skill set, it may take you some time to find, but that is step 1. Then step 2 is the foundation. And if you're a marketer and you're starting in a company early, or you're a freelancer, you probably help a lot of companies in this stage. That's someone who's gotten this initial channel. They've made some sales, they've done some things, but now they need to move forward, build out their team, begin to think bigger. And so in this foundation stage, really what you do is you lay all the foundation of what you need to scale. You do these things that are gonna multiply the efforts that come after it. And this is why I don't want to ignore this stage. You don't want to hop right to expanding out to tons of channels. Dial in this foundation first, and it pays off dividends. So what does this include? This includes landing pages. Where do consumers land on your website, and how do they convert, and how do you make sure it's good? So there's software like Replo that spins up multiple landing pages and quick pages and different experiences. And what you'll find is that if you have different landing pages for your different drops and your campaigns that actually link to specifics around them, different landing pages for different influencers, for different customer archetypes based on what you're emphasizing in the ad, it makes a huge difference in your overall conversion. And getting into the habit of how do we do this? Do we do this default in Shopify? If we are a lead-based service, are we using something like ClickFunnels or lead pages? What are we doing there? All the way to if you're e-commerce, you're using something like Replo, how do you make sure you are making the most out of every visit you get? Related to that, we talk about email, we talk about SMS. So I obviously use Omnisend for stuff like this, but there's also pop-up software and other things that can really help improve it. But every time someone lands on your site, the higher chances you get their email, the more value that has to you over time. And then once you have that email or that SMS, what they're educated with and how that works pays off dividends as you add more and more people to it. So there's a software called Aaliyah, helps optimize pop-ups. And in this stage, I'm really thinking through, what am I giving people when they sign up on my email list? What is my offer? Am I testing discounts? Am I putting it on every page? Am I leading on the homepage? Or do I have guides leads? What am I doing to make sure I get that download? And then what technology am I using to get it? That's one part of the equation. And then the other part is, what does automation look like? And I have an entire email marketing video you can find on my profile where I dive deep into this. But basically, how are you educating people about your brand automatically? How are you providing education to new customers? The more of those auto emails and automation flows, that is then something that exists. If you have 1,000 more customers come in, they automatically get into this flow. Their lifetime value increases, and it makes a huge difference. And that's why we recommend investing that time and energy at this stage, once you're making a little money, to set all this up to then enable you to efficiently scale after. And that leads us to the third stage of brand building. That is the multiplier. That's basically taking all the things you're doing already and putting them across as many places before you think about something new. So for instance, if you're doing really well with your Instagram organic content, but you didn't put the time in to cross-post on TikTok all the time, it's going back, uploading all that old content, putting the new content in. And if it's not perfect, if it doesn't quite work, or you've been trying it, trying to say, hey, how can I manually adjust this? How can I build a workflow to slightly update these existing assets I'm already doing to get max value? On the advertising end, this can apply where if you're running a bunch of those ads on Meta, this is where you're saying, hey, can I bring this over into TikTok? Can I be using GMV Max? Do I have additional places I can use these assets I'm already investing in to make money? And there's often not a ton of room here, but it's worth doing this and making sure you're in that habit of, yes, my Instagram stuff is going into my email marketing. I'm actually pushing it to TikTok, and we make slight changes, but it's worth the time to do that because we're gaining traction there. And thinking through what all those multipliers look like.
When brands are looking to find that breakout thing, their unique special sauce or scale, a topic that always comes up is brand collaborations. And I'm actually going to go inside Particl and look at the actual data from a number of the most popular brand collabs that we've seen recently. And it's going to show you some of the strategies behind what an actual collab looks like. You're going to find pretty interesting. So I'm going to start with Malbon Golf and their collaboration with Neighborhood. So Malbon's made a pretty big name on collabs in general, but this is typical of what you'll see when there's brands that have an overlapping fan base. They want to take advantage of that. They want to sell out, but there's not like a big commercial appeal in the collab. So looking here, you can actually see the day this launch was available, basically sold out within like 3 or 4 days. There's not much volume after this first week. They're doing a low amount of units, 100 of each of these shirts, 60 of these golf bags, which is the marquee item. This is a pretty typical collab that fits that mold. Brand awareness for both, but they're not trying to move major units. Then we can look at a collab that's about brand awareness. So this is the Kith Giorgio Armani collab, and they aren't selling much of this at all. They promoted the hell out of it, lookbooks, campaigns, etc. And maybe they sell in store like a decent amount more, but online they sold 22 of these $600 shirts. They're selling like 4 of this short sleeve, 12 of these shoes, like combined. This is brand building. This is Kith saying, we want to be associated with Giorgio Armani. We want their logo right next to ours. We're going to pay a big fee for that. We're going to promote that. And we don't really care if we make the money back from it. It's about building brand to sell our other stuff. And it's worth understanding that strategy when you see these big name collabs. But on the other end of this, you see what Skims did with Roberto Cavalli. So this is a $1 million plus collab launch, and it's just swimwear. So what they're doing is they're making luxury more affordable. So with the Kith Armani collab, it's as expensive as buying an Armani item. It just has a Kith logo on it. But this, you're basically the cheapest entry point you're going to get into the Cavalli universe. $88 tops, $188 one pieces, and they're selling an absolute ton of them because Skims has a huge audience. You can buy into luxury, and they're doing 2,000 swimsuits, 1,500 swimsuits. They're just hammering the sales on these. And you'll see some of the products they have that are more unique. They only made a small volume of. But that's a strategy for a brand, especially a brand like Skims, to be able to say, hey, we're going to pay a fee to Cavalli. We're going to do this campaign that builds our brand with luxury. And we're actually going to make a lot of money back selling these units because we know our customer wants to buy into that luxury at our price point, and we have them in our database, on our list, in our social media. And then we have Kai by Kylie Jenner. So she does a lot of collabs with young and up and coming designers. It's actually a good showcase point for those designers to get exposure to like the Kardashian industrial complex. But these are small too, 160 units, 100 units. Again, this is brand building for the new designer. It's brand building for Kai to be collaborating with these cool, hot people, but they're not doing massive numbers. No one's making a ton of money. It's exposure and brand building for both of them. And also a good reminder when you go talk to a manufacturer that like, yes, people are actually doing runs of 100 of this kind of stuff. Maybe 200 or 300 moved across colorways. You can see all this data in Particl. You'll notice here that I have all this cut to certain date ranges around when these launches are. And we actually put together a little collaborative project based purely on collabs where you can dive into this collab data and more. I will link that down below. It's a little resource report that Particl has put together to get you to understand collabs and their data more. And if you are looking to do market research, whether it's to start a new brand, to understand what people in your space do as far as volume on stuff like this, so you know how much to produce, Particl is an amazing tool to be able to use stuff like that. And I appreciate them for sponsoring this video.
And then we get to stage 4, the most crucial stage, the stage I've worked with the most businesses on, and that is the crossover stage. This is when you've gotten some initial success, you're making some money, you still have a small team, but you've got to take it to the next level. And this means you're actually going to switch from just doing what you did to start, where, hey, I grew on organic Instagram, or I really hammered TikTok shop. Whatever that one thing is, now you're going to add in the rest. You're going to say, hey, methodically, case by case, without sacrificing my profitability, but with taking some risk, go from just organic into organic and paid. Or I'm gonna go from just paid to adding paid plus Amazon and add organic on top of that. You wanna basically flesh out the channels that you're sold in and having that combo of ads and organic. Because if you're not doing both super well, you're gonna have a hard time. The earlier that you get into, yeah, I do both of these great, once you've built your foundation, as a crucial part of brand building. And this is where, if you're a freelancer or you're a marketer, you're gonna be able to make a huge impact inside this stage. Because if you're excellent at one of these things or at the crossover between them, you can find efficiency, you can maximize value for a brand. And in this, to do this well, you have to pick your channels. What are we going to do? How similar are they? Are there lift? One thing that's talked about a lot inside this is when you invest a lot in TikTok Shop, you naturally go up inside Amazon. If you're already big on TikTok organic, adding Shop and adding Amazon makes a huge difference. Similarly, if you're in a service business and you're starting to get a lot of leads from one channel, it may be the time to say, hey, let's really invest in Google search or some of these places for SEO where people are beginning to go for that same thing we're already marketing, where we can reap the organic benefit. But you also have to decide your metrics. What are you measuring? Is it your return on ad spend? Where are you doing brand awareness? What does this team report in every week? Oftentimes when you've built up to this level, you're measuring some things, but if you're not creating a culture of trackable accountability by the time you hit this stage, you need to get it in place. And then last is the responsibilities. What can the people on your team realistically handle? What can get patched in? And who is responsible for what? Up until this stage of the business, there's likely a handful of people doing so much different stuff. You have to really look at what is outsourceable. Do people know what their roles are? What's their day-to-day responsibility? And how are they reporting to each other? Because if you're not actually sharing with each other what you're working on, how it's going, and how it's judged going into this stage, you have a hard time going to the next one. And for a lot of brands, this takes a lot of time to actually make that moment where you're going, we're good at organic and we're good at ads. We've put some of these metrics in place. We've brought in the team and they're the right people. Sometimes this can last years. They're brands that I've heard of over the last few years, but they're not overnight. Some have been around for 10 years, for 5 years, because this stuff takes time. And I cannot emphasize enough that, especially in America, we're always in such a rush to, I need to have my brand and be doing $1 million a month. And sometimes this is a much longer journey. That's how I look at it with the brands I have. The women's wear brand I work on, we're working on for 6+ years. And it really only started to have traction in the last few. Even what I'm doing with the brand stuff I sell basically as my merch with my valuable stuff, and it's interesting, it's a playground for me. I'm not stressing the time and attention and what it looks like. And maybe in a few years, it gets super laser focused on one thing I see an opportunity of. But in the meantime, it's about building a foundation. But once you're there, that's what leads us to number 5. And this is the funnest part of brand building, also one of the hardest, is that is getting your secret sauce. Every brand who crosses from this level before it into this next level really begins to enter the zeitgeist, to get some escape velocity, has one secret sauce thing. It could be a takeoff viral series. It could be a funnel that's like perfect and really nailed. It could be a product and an advancement, something that's like crazy and elevates the brand to the next level that becomes your signature. Collaborations also serve a lot here. If there's a jumping off point where you got to work with a major brand in the category and they opened you up to a huge awareness level, or maybe collabs become a more frequent part of what you work on. Or if you just have real expertise in one thing that you triple down on. And some quick examples here. On that last one, having real expertise, I look at this brand Hollow Alpaca. They are a socks brand. They make alpaca socks. When you say socks brand, how could that possibly be glamorous? What could you double down on there? They have ads expertise. They are killer meta ads people. When you go look at their account inside Foreplay or inside an ads transparency tool, you are going to see a huge amount of volume of ads, and they're crazy. They're utilizing every format. There's podcast ads, there's AI hooks, there's full AI videos, there's typical videos, UGC, statics. They are running every conceivable thing. They are done to a T in the best-in-class execution across everything, and they realize, look, this is our secret sauce. We may not know influencer, we may not know some of these other pieces, but we can be the best at this thing, and that is that brand's secret sauce. It's allowed it to achieve a way bigger market than you ever would have expected in D2C socks. But by the same token, sometimes this can be an understanding of modern media and social media. So I look at Cozy Earth. They did this thing called the Bedrock Challenge. They basically invited a bunch of influencers to a big event. They covered it on TikTok. There was lots of challenges. The influencers posted, they posted, and they went ultra viral by doing this unique, very modern approach to event-driven stuff on TikTok. This is something that a lot of other brands wouldn't sign up for, even know how to do. It was a risk for them. They had to invest in it. And that's what this stage is. This stage, you might take some shots. You might be spending 100K and it doesn't work. You might have to take a few shots on goal. But since you've built your foundation, you've scaled across channels, you have the ability to do that. For someone like Cozy Earth, they took advantage of the modern internet. The fact they knew how to use it created this massive viral moment. Now they have a repeatable framework. It's better than anyone else in the bedding category. And then once you're there, once you have that one secret item, it's about scale. Taking every channel and going pedal to the metal. And two brands I want to talk about that are excellent examples of this are Represent and Ridge Wallet. So these are brands that got to that previous stage, put the pedal to the metal, and are both leaning towards 9-figure brands, if not 9-figure brands already. And their secret sauce is interesting. So Represent, for instance, they found their secret sauce with the personal brand building around George and Michael and documenting that on YouTube, having his Instagram blow up, becoming like a true, charismatic, aspirational character for their target demographic that was larger than life that none of their competitors have. And Ridge Wallet did it almost the opposite way. They leaned into doing some unique vehicles, like they do contests, they've given away Cybertrucks and Lamborghinis, that was one. They leaned into all other media, they're doing street interviews, they kind of leaned into every scalable thing. But the real factor was they recruited Marquise Brownlee, one of the biggest YouTubers in the world, as a member of their team, as a equitied person working with and around Ridge. That put them on the map to a much wider audience in a much different way that no other brand around them was doing. But you'll know both of those brands had that big marquee moment or concept that has driven them and given them the ability that they put the gas on everything else, because you have to be good at both that special sauce and everything around it. And this is the stage most brands live in for years and years, to continue to put that pedal on the gas, keep their culture, keep their metrics strong, keep their responsibilities, and get to as large as they can. It's kind of like a dream framework to get to this. But then you get to stage 7. And look, we live in this world of disruptor and challenger brands, where when you get to a certain level, all of a sudden you're competing against the younger, leaner, smarter, more modern team that you once were, who can take more risks, that's more savvy, that can move faster. And it's harder and harder to compete with them, and that cycle gets faster and faster. So for any brand that's already at that scale, they need to be laser focused on continuing to execute without getting slow and a methodology to stay interesting. It's very similar to the secret sauce in 5, but harder and more conceptual to wrap your head around is how do you continue to stay interesting over time and have that attention grabbing thing. And one of my favorite examples of this is Skims. Skims sells very undifferentiated products unlike any other lingerie or activewear or basics brand. But they've done two things that have really kept them in the spotlight. And the first is using product as marketing, introducing conceptual products into their flow. So even though they're selling you basics, they're launching head wraps and nipple bras, and these things that grab attention as part of their core process, and then people come to their pages, see the other things, and convert. And it's now a core part of their marketing kit. And on top of that, they've done collaboration and campaigns, but they do it relentlessly. They do multiple a month. They have celebrities behind them. They've worked with everybody from Cavalli collabs to having Patrick Schwarzenegger in their ads to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, huge athletes. Same thing with models, male, female, WNBA. They basically said we are going to onslaught the amount of campaigns and collaborations that we do, and the amount of people that are the faces of them, what the art direction looks like, spans from everyone from Lana Del Rey down to people we've never heard of. And they're like, hey, this velocity can keep us more relevant and more on the internet than any brand that's competing with us. And those are the levels. And I think it's worth thinking about with your toolkit, you as a creative, you as a marketer, where can you lend the most value? Where do you need to improve? Working in companies at these different stages to begin to add stuff to your toolkit, so you get this kind of complete holistic understanding of how brands work and operate. And if you're an entrepreneur, thinking critically about, did I skip a stage and that's why I'm flailing? Or where am I at in this journey? And it's okay to be at some of these stages for a few years and think critically about what you need to do to move forward. But hopefully this serves as a roadmap for where you are in this process. And look, in my journey at this point in my life, having been through many of these again and again and seeing some fail and blow up because they tried to scale too fast or didn't have a foundation or they never got past that one channel. I've seen the downside of so many of these. And now at this stage, I get to actually think back and think critically about where can the things that I know about and the skill set lend the most value inside the projects that I work on. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and you'll see the whole series of all these conversations we have with these London businesses come out in the new series of creative operations here in a few weeks. Thanks for watching.